there. Wake up. No, not that lazy little stretch you call awareness, not that polite nod you give life while it empties your pockets, drinks your years, and sends you home with a smile stitched to your face like you volunteered for the humiliation. I said, wake up. Wake up. Because you have been sleepwalking through disrespect, music, through delay, through excuses, through fake love, fake loyalty, fake concern, fake opportunity, fake patience, fake I'm doing this for your own good poison dressed like advice. And the ugliest part? You help them. You help them do it by being easy to soothe, easy to flatter, easy to delay, easy to keep on the shelf with one compliment and one apology every 3 months. You keep calling it bad luck. No. It is not bad luck when the same pattern keeps choosing you. It is sleep. It is emotional laziness. It is spiritual dullness. It is you refusing to look directly at what people do because what they do is uglier than what they say. A father says he cares, but he only speaks softly when others are watching. A friend laughs with you, then goes silent when you succeed. A lover says, I'm just overwhelmed, but somehow finds energy for everyone except you. You felt that. You knew that. You swallowed that truth because facing it would have cost you comfort. So, let this be cruel enough to help you. Your life is being shaped by what you keep excusing. Wake up before your whole identity becomes a waiting room. Wake up before being patient turns into being erased. First, stop confusing familiarity with safety. That is one of the oldest narcotics in ordinary life. Something repeats, so you assume it belongs. Someone stays near you for years, so you assume they mean well. A voice becomes common in your day. A face becomes part of your routine. A pattern wraps itself around your hours, and your stupid little heart, your poor eager heart, starts calling repetition proof. But poison can be repetitive too. Neglect can be repetitive. Small humiliation can become so regular, you stop hearing the insult inside it. Think about the family member who only speaks to you gently when you are useful. Think about the friend who remembers your existence when they need advice, contacts, money, emotional labor, a ride, a defense, a witness, a shield. Think about the partner who says, you know I'm just like this, every time they fail you in the exact same way. Familiarity does not make damage holy. Duration does not make disrespect loyal. A prison can become familiar. That does not make it home. Some of you grew so used to being interrupted, dismissed, delayed, and emotionally underfed that calm attention now feels suspicious to you. Isn't that disgusting? Isn't that sad? When someone answers clearly, you think they must want something. When someone is actually consistent, you wait for the mask to slip. Because chaos trained your nervous system to call confusion love. So wake up there first, not to other people, to your own adaptation to mistreatment. Your tolerance is not always strength. Sometimes it is injury with good manners. Learn to ask, does this feel familiar because it is right, or because I have been hurt here before? Second, stop worshiping potential while your real life starves in front of you. This one is filthy. This one ruins years. You look at a person, a job, a friendship, a version of yourself, and instead of seeing what it is, you kneel before what it could become. If only everyone behaved better, communicated better, healed faster, tried harder, listened more, cared more. Sighs. If only. If only, if only that phrase has buried more strong people than failure ever did. You keep pouring effort into future versions of things that have shown no evidence of wanting to exist. A man keeps forgiving the same cold woman because he has seen flashes of tenderness. A woman keeps carrying the same unreliable man because she has seen moments of depth. An employee keeps sacrificing for an employer that praises them in private and passes them over in public because they believe one day they'll notice. One day. What a pretty coffin. Potential is not a contract. A glimpse is not a pattern. A good week is not a transformed character. You are not noble for feeding fantasies while facts starve. You are not deep because you can detect hidden goodness in someone who keeps choosing easy cowardice over difficult honesty. Wake up. Judge by repetition. Judge by cost. Judge by whether change survives inconvenience. Because anyone can improve for a weekend, anyone can cry, anyone can promise, anyone can perform regret when loss is close enough to smell. Real change alters schedules, habits, ego, tone, priorities, and choices under pressure. If none of that moved, then nothing moved. You are not waiting for potential. You are being delayed by a hallucination with a human face. Third, stop making yourself smaller just to remain digestible to people who are never going to celebrate your fullness anyway. That little act, that quiet shrinking, that careful editing of your tone, your ambition, your standards, your intelligence, your boundaries, people call it maturity. Sometimes it is. Often it is fear wearing a tie. You know the scene, you speak with confidence once and the room stiffens. You draw one clear boundary and suddenly you are difficult. You stop answering immediately and now you are different. You decline one invitation and now you are acting strange. Strange? No, less available, less edible, less easy to rearrange. Families do this too. The child who starts thinking for themselves becomes the problem. The sibling who refuses guilt becomes cold. The wife who stops apologizing for every breath becomes changed. The husband who stops financing everyone's comfort becomes selfish. And because you fear exile more than disrespect, you start clipping pieces off yourself just to keep the atmosphere smooth. The tragedy of that, you betray your own shape so people with fragile appetites can keep calling you lovable. But a person who only loves you in smaller portions does not love you. They manage you. They manage you. Let that burn. A workplace will praise your effort until your competence threatens someone's status. A friendship will adore your softness until your standards require reciprocity. A relationship will enjoy your loyalty until your loyalty grows teeth and says, enough. So, wake up to this. Comfort bought with self-erasure is not peace. It is internal homelessness. Every time you make yourself tiny to preserve false harmony, you train people to meet a version of you that does not exist. Then one day, you wonder why no one truly knows you. Because you introduce them to your disguise. Fourth, stop waiting for humiliation to become dramatic before you admit it is happening. Some of you still think disrespect has to scream. You think betrayal needs a headline. You think cruelty has to slam a door, raise a hand, or spit a sentence with obvious venom before you're allowed to call it real. No, that would almost be merciful. Real damage, the kind that reshapes your posture and your voice and your appetite for closeness, usually arrives in teaspoons. Snorts, a delay here, a forgotten promise there. Being laughed at in a room and told you are too sensitive afterward. Being interrupted every single time you try to explain yourself. Having your good intentions assumed to be obligations. Having your quietness treated as permission. Small things, repeated things, ordinary things. The kind of things that never look cinematic enough for people to take seriously. But your body takes them seriously. Your sleep does, your confidence does, your face does. You start rehearsing sentences before speaking. You start doubting your memory. You start apologizing before making a reasonable request. You start calling your own hurt overthinking because you've been trained to require courtroom-level evidence before granting yourself emotional truth. Wake up. Chronic disrespect is not less real because it is subtle. The manager who smiles while loading you with work nobody else carries. The friend who shares your vulnerable moments as entertainment in a softer tone, so it looks harmless. The partner who keeps a reserve of affection for when you're about to leave, then withdraws it again once you settle down. That is not a misunderstanding. That is a system. And systems shape souls. You do not owe endless patience to patterns that are eating your self-respect in clean clothes. Call a thing by its weight, not by its volume. A knife does not become gentle just because it is quiet. Fifth, stop letting people rent space in your mind without paying in truth. This one. This one is ugly because it happens in silence. Nobody sees it, so nobody rescues you from it. A conversation ends, but not for you. A look, a sentence, a cold reply, an unanswered message, a change in tone, a public slight dressed like a joke. It keeps echoing. You replay, reinterpret, revise, defend yourself to invisible juries, argue with ghosts in the shower, craft perfect responses 3 days too late. And meanwhile, the person who caused the disturbance is eating dinner, scrolling casually, sleeping peacefully, barely remembering the bruise they left behind. Do you understand how insulting that is? Some of you are mentally serving people who could not even pass a basic test of loyalty. You study their moods, their delays, their silences, their inconsistencies, not to understand truth, but to maintain emotional access. You become unpaid analysts of the very people who keep you unstable. A son spends years trying to decode a father who only offers approval when achievement can be displayed. A woman spends nights wondering whether she was too much, too quiet, too demanding, too emotional for a man who simply lacked the courage to be clear. An employee breaks themselves trying to earn stable respect from a boss whose approval exists only to keep effort flowing upward. Wake up. Your attention is not free. Where it goes, your life follows. Every hour spent decoding the careless is an hour stolen from building the self that no longer begs for crumbs. That does not mean become stone. It means become honest. Honest enough to admit when you are attached to confusion because clarity would force a decision. Honest enough to see when your mind keeps returning to a person not because they are profound, but because they are unresolved. And unresolved things have a nasty perfume, don't they? They smell like hope and nausea at the same time. So, put rules on your mental door. Not everyone who wounded you deserves a permanent seat in your thought life. Not every silence deserves interpretation. Not every mixed signal deserves poetry. Some people should be understood once and then left outside. Because if your mind becomes a hotel for the insincere, your peace will live like a beggar in its own house. 6. Stop asking why they changed before you ask what was finally no longer being fed. That question, why did they change, has broken so many decent people because it assumes there was once a stable goodness that mysteriously vanished. Sometimes there was often there was simply a benefit that expired. When your energy was high, when your attention was easy, when your admiration was available, when your forgiveness was generous, when your boundaries were weak, when your usefulness was fresh, people could afford warmth. Warmth is cheap when it is profitable. But the moment the emotional economy shifts, the tone shifts. That is when you see what was rented and what was real. A friend grows colder the month you stop solving their crises. A relative becomes offended when you stop carrying the burden everyone quietly decided was yours. A partner begins calling you different once you stop absorbing every mood swing without question. This is why some people adore you most when you are exhausted. Exhausted people are easier to manage. They do not challenge. They do not investigate. They do not require equal effort. They confuse survival with humility and call silence maturity. And predators of comfort, ordinary predators, polished ones, socially acceptable ones, love that version of you. So, wake up to the arithmetic of affection. Who gets softer when you are useful? Who gets sharper when you are independent? Who praises your heart while quietly depending on your lack of standards? There are people who look tender only because you have never, music, interrupted the arrangement. The second you do, they do not become cruel. They reveal the cost of their kindness. Think of the mother who says, "I sacrificed everything for you," but cannot tolerate her child making one adult decision she did not script. Think of the man who calls his wife his peace while expecting her to carry the emotional weight of the entire home without ever being tired herself. Think of the woman who says she just wants honesty but punishes every honest answer that threatens her preferred illusion. Think of the team leader who says, "We're family here," until someone asks for fair treatment instead of inspirational slogans. We're family here. There it is. One of the dirtiest phrases in modern life. The sentence people use when they want devotion without accountability. And you, poor thing, you wanted to believe them because belonging is a powerful drug. Everyone wants a place where effort is seen, where loyalty is safe, where rest is allowed, where pain is not used against them later. Everyone, That is why manipulation borrows the language of shelter. It says, I care. I'm proud of you. You know I mean well. Don't make this a big deal. I just miss the old you. I'm only hard on you because you matter. No. Sometimes they are only hard on you because you are available. Sometimes they miss the old you because the old you is easier to consume. Sometimes, don't make this a big deal means, please do not drag my convenience into the light. The answer is not cynicism. It is pattern recognition with a spine. It is learning to read how people behave when your service goes down. It is noticing who turns respectful only after distance appears. Who becomes attentive only when access is threatened. Who suddenly remembers your worth when they feel your absence starting to harden. That last one seduces so many people back into the same trap. They ignore you, neglect you, reduce you, postpone you, dull you, and the second you begin to detach, here comes the apology, the softness, the effort, the flowers, the humility, the perfect words. But urgency is not transformation. Fear of losing control can imitate love for exactly as long as it needs to. So, ask the uglier question. What changed in them? Or what stopped flowing from me? If their warmth depends on your depletion, you are not being loved, you are being harvested. 7, stop romanticizing how much pain you can carry without collapsing, as if endurance by itself is a personality. This one hides behind strength, which is why it is so dangerous. People praise you for handling a lot. They admire how calm you are, how patient, how composed, how forgiving, how hard to read. They say you are mature because you do not make scenes, because you keep showing up, because you absorb tension without exploding. Or sometimes that is strength. Sometimes that is a nervous system trained to survive by disappearing inside itself. There is a kind of endurance that makes a person noble. There is another kind that makes them hollow. One protects what matters. The other just gets used to being used. Think of the husband who has not felt respected in years, but think of the wife whose needs are treated like weather, noticed, discussed, then ignored. Yet she keeps calling herself patient because she fears what honesty would rearrange. Think of the son who became the responsible one so early that now nobody asks whether he is tired, only whether he is available. Think of the woman in the office who handles everyone's emotional debris so well that the entire building quietly agrees she can survive without support. You see the pattern? The more reliably you endure, the less urgently people feel required to care. And because your identity got wrapped in being dependable, being calm, being the one who can take it, you start to mistake your own erosion for virtue. You become proud of how little you ask for. Proud of starving elegantly. That is almost funny, but not really. Because beneath that polished resilience is often a terrified belief. If I become difficult, if I become visible, if I become needy in any honest human way, I will be left. There it is. The secret religion of over-endurance, abandonment. So, you keep carrying pain in ways that look disciplined from far away. You answer gently after being dismissed. You keep serving after being overlooked. You keep understanding, excusing, interpreting, absorbing. You tell yourself everyone has wounds, everyone is trying, everyone is stressed, everyone means well deep down. Maybe not. But even if they are wounded, your job is not to become the mattress beneath every falling body. Wake up. Strength is not measured by how long you can function while unloved correctly. Strength is measured by whether you can interrupt a pattern, even when that interruption costs comfort, image, approval, or access. Some of you need to hear this like a slap. Staying calm is not always wisdom. Sometimes it is fear of consequence with excellent posture. Some of you think because you do not shout, you are in control. No. Sometimes you are just domesticated. You have been trained to keep the peace in rooms built on your sacrifice. That is not peace. That is managed silence. Look at the ordinary evidence. The friend who dumps everything on you but disappears when you need steady support. The sibling who loves your generosity but resents your boundaries. The parent who admires your achievements while remaining emotionally unreachable, then acts shocked when you become distant. The lover who says, I know you're strong, every time you need tenderness, as if your strength cancels your humanity. That sentence right there, you're strong, can become a beautiful little weapon. So elegant, so flattering, so useful when someone wants to justify giving you less. And because you fear appearing weak, you nod, you carry more, you say less, you tighten your face, you call it growth. But your body keeps score in silence. Clenched jaw, interrupted sleep, short breath, private tears, fatigue that feels spiritual, irritation that arrives without a visible cause, strange numbness where tenderness used to live. Your soul is not confused, it is overburdened. There is a point where endurance becomes self-betrayal. There is a point where I can handle it becomes I no longer notice what is breaking me. Wake up before your entire identity becomes a monument to pain carried quietly so other people never have to grow. Let them feel the absence of your unpaid emotional labor. Let them meet the version of you that no longer bleeds politely, not violent, not cruel, not sinful, just unavailable for misuse. That is the part many of you fear the most. Not losing people, but watching them reveal who they are once your endless tolerance is gone. And that revelation, ugly as it is, may be the first honest gift they ever give you. Eighth, stop confusing emotional intensity with depth. This one has trapped more hungry hearts than lies ever did, because intensity feels holy. It feels rare. It feels like proof. A person speaks with urgency, looks at you like they have finally found something real, opens up fast, shares pain early, confesses wounds, says they have never felt this understood, this seen, this safe. And you, poor brilliant fool, you think speed means sincerity. No. Sometimes speed means appetite. Sometimes it means loneliness looking for a room. Sometimes it means a manipulative person has learned that fast intimacy skips the normal questions. Wise people ask slowly, depth is not how quickly someone reaches for your soul. Depth is what they do after they touch it. There are people who can cry in front of you on Tuesday and betray your confidence on Friday. There are people who can tell you their childhood story in one sitting and still never develop the discipline to treat you consistently. There are people who confuse being emotionally expressive with being emotionally responsible. A man says, I've never opened up like this before, then disappears the moment your standards require steadiness. A woman says, you understand me better than anyone, then weaponizes your softness in the first serious disagreement. A friend shares their darkest season with you, receives your patience, your listening, your prayers, your late night care, and then mocks your vulnerability later in a group because their ego cannot survive being seen as the weaker one. Intensity can be real and still be immature, real and still be selfish, real and still be unfit for trust. That is the part sentimental people hate. They think if the feeling was genuine in the moment, then the person must be good. No, feelings prove emotion. They do not prove character. Clears throat, wake up. You must learn to separate heat from structure, fire from foundation. A person may be overwhelmed by you, fascinated by you, moved by you, inspired by you, emotionally lit up by you, and still lack the integrity to protect what they touched. This matters in marriage, in friendship, in work, in family. The boss who praises you passionately in private but never supports you where it counts. The sibling who says, you mean everything to me, but vanishes when sacrifice becomes inconvenient. The person who comes alive in your presence, then goes dead in discipline, dead in follow-through, dead in honesty, dead in accountability. And because you are starving for something real, you treat intensity as water, even when it is only smoke. Some of you are attached, not to the person, but to the emotional weather they create around you. The highs, the urgency, the sense of being chosen, the dramatic confessions, the charged silences, the pull, the rupture, the reunion, the apology, the sudden sweetness after distance. What a circus. What a filthy little theater of nervous systems mistaking instability for meaning. But depth is slower than that. Depth survives boredom. Depth answers difficult questions without turning them into punishments. Depth can carry ordinary days without manufacturing emotional earthquakes to feel alive. Depth is not afraid of consistency because consistency exposes whether the bond has actual substance. This is why so many people sabotage calm love, calm friendship, calm respect. Calm forces them to meet themselves without fireworks. And snorts, some cannot bear it. They need friction, confusion, longing, pursuit, guessing, imbalance. They need to keep your heart slightly uncertain so your attention stays locked. Wake up. If someone needs your confusion to feel important, they are not deep. They are dependent on distortion. If someone can only access tenderness after distance scares them, they are not devoted. They are reactive. If someone shares their wounds beautifully but refuses the hard daily work of honesty, regulation, and repair, then all that touching sadness in them is still a danger to your peace. And yes, that hurts. It hurts because some people are not monsters. They are simply undisciplined, unhealed, unexamined, and too selfish to admit the damage that combination causes. Those are often the hardest ones to release. Not because they were right for you, because they were almost something, but almost can wreck a life when you keep kneeling to it. So stop asking whether the feeling was real. Ask whether the structure was safe. Ask whether the heat produced light, or only kept you too dazzled to notice the smoke filling the room. 9th, stop waiting for everyone to understand your boundary before you enforce it. That fantasy right there has kept many good people trapped inside explanations that nobody sincere ever needed. You think if you say it clearly enough, gently enough, patiently enough, compassionately enough, if you add context, soften the tone, mention your own flaws, reassure them of your love, repeat yourself with grace, remove every possible misunderstanding, then they will finally respect the line. Maybe. Or maybe they understood the first time and simply preferred the version of reality in which your boundary could be negotiated into dust. Some people do not resist boundaries because they are confused. They resist them because boundaries end their discount. The friend who always arrives late and jokes about it is not uninformed. The relative who keeps crossing private lines, then acts hurt when corrected, is not accidentally forgetful. The partner who hears, "That hurts," and immediately explains why their intentions were good, is not protecting love. They are protecting their self-image from the inconvenience of change. Wake up. A boundary is not a speech. It is a decision with a consequence. If the consequence never arrives, your words are just weather. This is why some of you are exhausted. You are not failing to communicate. You are over-communicating where action was required 3 seasons ago. A woman tells a man 10 different ways that disappearing after conflict damages trust. He cries, apologizes, becomes soft for 6 days, then repeats it. A son tells his family he needs less criticism disguised as concern. They nod, laugh nervously, and continue. An employee says they cannot keep carrying everyone's workload. Management sympathizes, calls them valuable, then schedules the same abuse more neatly. And because you are decent, you keep trying to reach their conscience. But conscience without consequence is a bedtime story people tell themselves to keep using you respectfully. You need less poetry and more policy. Less emotional thesis. More, if this continues, I step back. Less, please understand my heart. More, this is no longer available. Does that sound cold? Good. Cold is sometimes the temperature truth takes when warmth has been wasted. There are rooms where your kindness is misread as elasticity. There are people who hear your patience and translate it as permission. There are families that have built whole traditions on the assumption that one person, you, will absorb the discomfort everyone else refuses to face. Then the day you stop, they call you changed. Of course they do. Systems protest when the unpaid stabilizer resigns. That does not mean you are wrong. It means your absence exposed how much false peace depended on your silent cooperation. Some of you still need permission to accept a brutal fact. Clarity is not always persuasive to people who benefit from your confusion. They do not need more explanation. They need less access. Because the point of a boundary is not to win agreement. It is to protect reality, your reality. The life God entrusted to you is not meant to be squandered proving your pain in 12 different tones to people who have already learned how to survive your protests. And yes, enforcing a boundary may cost affection, access, image, even belonging in certain rooms. But do you know what else it costs not to yourself? Quietly, daily, respectively. That is the part nobody warned you about. You do not only lose time, you lose internal authority. You begin to speak words your own nervous system no longer believes because it has watched you declare limits you never honor. So wake up there. Make your no mean movement. Make your distance mean something. Make your standards visible in the architecture of your availability. Let people discover that you can be compassionate without being reachable for misuse. The ones who respect you will adjust. The ones who needed you porous will accuse. There is your answer. 10th, stop calling it humility when you keep abandoning your own worth before anyone else has to challenge it. This is a quiet disease. It wears good manners. It quotes patience. It bows its head. It says things like, I don't want to be difficult. Maybe I'm expecting too much. I can wait. It's fine. They probably didn't mean it. I don't need much. Sometimes that is grace. Sometimes that is fear rehearsed until it sounds holy. True humility does not deny value. It places value correctly. False humility makes you easier to overlook because you do half the erasing for everyone else. A talented man undercharges forever because he is afraid that asking fairly will expose him as replaceable. A woman keeps offering emotional loyalty to someone who never clearly chooses her because she thinks asking for clarity would make her look needy. A person keeps staying silent in meetings while less capable people shape the direction because they have mistaken music, self-minimization for elegance. Do you hear the insult inside that? You are treating what was entrusted to you, mind, effort, dignity, time, presence, as if it should apologize for existing. And the world loves that. Oh, it loves that. Families love the child who never asks. Workplaces love the employee who never negotiates. Friends love the one who always understands. Selfish lovers love the partner who keeps translating neglect into compassion. Why would they interrupt such a profitable arrangement? Wake up. There is a difference between being easy to work with and being easy to erase. There is a difference between contentment and learned scarcity. There is a difference between mercy and the compulsive need to make yourself smaller so other people never feel confronted by what you deserve. Some of you do not need more confidence. You need more honesty about how often you volunteer for the lower place because rejection feels less painful when you perform it on yourself first. There, I said it. You lower your price before being asked, you lower your standards. Before being tested, you lower your voice before being interrupted. You lower your expectations before being disappointed. You reject yourself preemptively and call it wisdom. Why? Because then, when life underfeeds you, it matches the story you already told yourself. It hurts less when the insult feels familiar. This happens in marriages too. One spouse keeps shrinking needs because the other is moody, overworked, emotionally avoidant, or simply selfish. Over time, the shrinking spouse starts calling themselves simple. No. They are adapting to deprivation. It happens in friendship. One person always initiates, always checks in, always forgives, always makes the travel, always closes the gap. Eventually, they stop asking for mutuality and start calling the friendship low maintenance. What a clean little lie. It happens in faith communities, in workplaces, in extended families. Anywhere image can cover imbalance. People praise your humility while quietly building expectations around your willingness to accept less. Stop helping them. Stop auditioning for the role of the one who can survive without proper care. You do not become arrogant by naming your worth accurately. You become dangerous to systems that fed on your underestimation. And that danger is healthy, not cruel. Healthy. You can remain decent, clean-hearted, and God-conscious without dragging yourself through life like an apology. You can ask directly. You can leave quietly. You can refuse gracefully. You can charge fairly. You can say, that does not work for me, without writing a tragic novel in the message first. Because humility without self-respect becomes an invitation. An invitation for louder, greedier, more entitled people to write your limits for you. Let them be disappointed by your standards before you become disappointed by your own reflection. Better a few offended people than a whole life spent kneeling to your own diminishment. Wake up, not to your greatness like some cheap slogan. Wake up to your accountability. You are answerable for what you keep consenting to in the name of being easy. And some of your softness has become consent. 11th, stop pretending you do not know when something is over just because the ending arrived without ceremony. That one cuts deep, doesn't it? Because you were trained to believe endings should announce themselves. You expect a closing speech, a confession, a final betrayal dramatic enough to justify grief. You expect the friend to say, "I do not value this anymore." You expect the partner to admit, "My effort has left the building." You expect the family dynamic to reveal its final shape in one undeniable moment. But most endings rot quietly. They happen in the decreasing effort, the increasing vagueness, the missing curiosity, the mechanical responses, the subtle contempt, the way your joy no longer lands, the way your pain no longer stops anything. You always know earlier than you admit. A marriage snorts can be ending long before divorce enters the room. A friendship can be dead while both people still exchange birthday messages. A job can be over while you are still employed. Respect can be gone while politeness remains. That is why some losses are so maddening. There is no clean event to point at, only 1,000 tiny withdrawals. A spouse no longer reaches for your inner world, only your usefulness. A friend stops protecting your dignity in rooms you are not in. A parent still asks about your schedule, but not your heart. A boss still compliments your output, but has stopped seeing your future. And because nothing exploded, you keep negotiating with decay. Snorts. You keep telling yourself it will return. Reset, improve, open, soften, remember. Remember. What a painful word. You keep loving the memory of something in the body of something else. That is one of the loneliest experiences a human being can have. Continuing to relate to a former reality that no longer exists while everyone around you benefits from your refusal to acknowledge the funeral. Wake up. Closure is not always given. Sometimes it is taken by the person brave enough to stop arguing with evidence. Evidence does not always scream. Sometimes it yawns, sometimes it delays. Sometimes it says, "I'm just tired," for the 9th month in a row. Sometimes it performs concern with no behavioral translation. Sometimes it keeps you around in a downgraded role because your presence remains useful even after your value has stopped being cherished. There is a cruel little category of relationship where someone no longer wants you deeply enough to honor you, but still wants you nearby enough to benefit from your loyalty. That arrangement kills souls politely. You need to become a better witness, not a louder victim, not a paranoid judge, a witness, someone who can look at what has quietly become true without demanding theatrical proof. The friend does not call unless they need the partner, does not repair unless losing access feels imminent. The family system only goes soft when you begin to detach. The workplace praises what it has no intention of rewarding. There. How many signs do you need before your own heart is allowed to stop standing in the doorway? Some of you are exhausted not because the loss is unclear, but because you keep refusing to let the grief begin. Grief cannot start while fantasy still has legal rights in your mind. End it there, internally. Honestly, let dead things be dead without needing them to stab you on camera first. This does not mean hatred. It does not mean revenge. It means alignment. It means your choices catch up to the truth your body has been whispering for months. Sometimes the holiest thing you can do is stop knocking on a door that has already become a wall. So now that the polite little fog has been burned off, look at your life without anesthesia. Look at the rooms where you shrank. Look at the people who only soften when distance appears. Look at the work that drains you but never names you fairly. Look at the family patterns that survive on your silence. Look at the friendships fed by your availability but starved of mutuality. Look at the relationships where you keep confusing longing with loyalty, intensity with depth, apology with transformation, patience with permission. Look, because sleep is not always closing your eyes. Sometimes it is opening them every morning and still refusing to name what you see. Some of you have been waiting for a cleaner villain, a louder betrayal, a simpler answer, a more convenient truth. Life rarely gifts such tidy theater. No, it gives you patterns, repetition, tone, timing. What rises when you say no? What cools when you stop giving? What disappears when your usefulness goes dim? That is the scripture of reality written in ordinary behavior. And you have been skipping the verses because they offend your hope. But hope without honesty becomes an accomplice. Do you hear that? Hope is beautiful when it walks beside truth. Without truth, it becomes a narcotic that lets you endure what should have ended, excuse what should have been confronted, and worship what never actually existed. You want a violent sentence? Here. Much of what broke you was not malice. It was your refusal to respond to what you already knew. That hurts more because it hands some responsibility back to you. Not for what others chose, for what you kept allowing those choices to shape. And listen carefully, because this is where weak minds run to extremes. Waking up does not mean becoming cruel. It does not mean becoming vulgar, arrogant, merciless, suspicious of everyone, theatrically cold or drunk on hardness. No, that is just wounded ego playing dress up. Real awakening is cleaner than that. It is disciplined. It is sober. It is the quiet refusal to keep donating your peace to patterns that have already introduced themselves. It is learning to see clearly without hating blindly, to leave without performing, to refuse without degrading, to grieve without crawling back, to speak without begging, to love without dissolving, to forgive without reopening the same wound as if mercy requires stupidity. Mercy does not require stupidity. Write that somewhere your excuses can see it. Some of you still want one final rescue fantasy. Maybe they will change once they lose me. Maybe they will finally understand. Maybe they will feel what I felt. Maybe they will come back with the language, the tears, the clarity, the effort, the humility. Maybe they will. But your awakening cannot be built on the timetable of someone else's conscience. If they grow, let them grow. If they regret, let them regret. If they finally understand the cost of how they handled you, let that understanding belong to their account before God and their own soul. Your task is not to supervise their realization. Your task is to stop betraying your own. So when you leave a pattern, leave it fully. Not with your body gone and your mind still kneeling in the ashes, still writing speeches, still checking for signs, still imagining the perfect closure that would finally validate the pain. Stop asking the wound to sign your permission slip. Stop it. Validation is not always delivered by the offender. Sometimes it is delivered by the peace that returns when you stop negotiating with what was poisoning you. That first quiet night, that first morning without dread, that first prayer not interrupted by the same human confusion, that first hour where your chest loosens because no one is currently manipulating your access, your guilt, your tenderness. Sighs, there is your evidence. Peace is often the receipt. Wake up then, not like a slogan, not like some cheap performance of aggression, not like a wounded actor stomping through life with a louder tone and the same blind spots. Wake up like a witness. Wake up like a steward of your own soul. Wake up like someone who knows time is too sacred to spend begging clarity from the committedly unclear. Wake up like someone who understands that not every closed door is a tragedy, and not every open door is a blessing. Wake up like someone who can see the difference between being needed and being valued, between being chosen and being used, between being admired and being safe. Wake up before your tenderness hardens into resentment. Wake up before your patience turns into a biography of avoidable sorrow. Wake up before the roles assigned to you by frightened, hungry, entitled people become mistaken for your identity, because the world will keep offering you disguises. The fixer, the strong one, the easy one, the understanding one, the dependable one, the one who asks for little, the one who can take it, the one who will stay, the one who will keep translating neglect into compassion. Burn those costumes, not with hate, with truth. And when the dust settles, let what remains be plain and severe and beautiful. A person who can love without kneeling, who can help without disappearing, who can forgive without forgetting reality, who can walk away without needing applause, who can hear a lie in a gentle voice, who can recognize a dead thing before it steals another year, who can choose clean distance over dirty closeness, who can stand before God and say, with no drama left in the mouth and no chains left in the chest, I finally saw it. And once I saw it, I woke up.